Welcome to the Power Factor Show. Episode 169.
The bandwidth for this episode of the Power Factor Show is brought to you by the Firearms Radio Network. Firearmsradio.tv.
Sponsored by Taylor Freelance, Rainier Ballistics, Hodgson Powders, and JPL Precision.
Hey Power Factor fans, I'm Rick. I mentioned in I think our third anniversary episode that one of the things I wanted to talk about was a little online discussion that took place, not online, in print, discussion about tactical reloads. If you read the Dillon Blue Press, which is a kind of a catalog gun magazine combination that they send out every month, there's been a lot of articles written by Duane Thomas. And Duane's a master class shooter. He gives some good tips. I thought the series that he wrote about how to shoot the classifier was very good. And he did a segment on the tactical reload. And he mentioned the name of Chuck Taylor, and Chuck Taylor's a guy who's been around in the gun training business for decades. I think he was actually one of the early instructors at Gunsight back in the 70s, and he has been largely credited with developing the tactical reload. Now in IDPA, there traditionally were two reloads that you would perform when you wanted to retain your magazine. Whether you wanted to or not didn't matter, when the rules dictated that you retain the magazine. So anytime you were performing a reload, when there was a round in the chamber, you had to retain the magazine that came out of the gun, whether that magazine had any rounds in it or not. And the idea behind that was to discourage anybody from counting rounds and therefore knowing when the mag was empty and the chamber was loaded and essentially being able to do a IPSC style speed load or whatever. And so even though people complain, oh geez, you know, who would want to retain an empty magazine? Why am I required to retain an empty magazine? The reason is because it's simulating the inability in a gunfight to count your rounds. So when you do your reload with the loaded chamber, you wouldn't know that your magazine was empty. In a course of fire in an IDPA match, of course, you do know when it's empty because you've counted how many rounds you're going to fire, where the reload is going to fall. And so to simulate not having determined in advance when your gun is going to run dry, you have to keep that mag, whether there's rounds in it or not. Now, to get back to the discussion, Duane Thomas, his description of the tactical reload, I think, kind of was very much along the lines of how it's usually done in IDPA. So you have an empty gun, and you've got a mag that's in the gun. We're pretending our chamber is loaded. And the classical way of doing the tactical load, I'm going to face the other way here. The classic way of doing the tac load is to go to the belt, get the magazine, and holding this fully loaded mag in the weak hand, withdraw the partial from the gun, and you're handling both mags now in the weak hand. So you're exchanging the two magazines, replacing the depleted magazine with the full one, and then stowing the depleted mag that came out of the gun. And that's exactly the reload that Duane described. And of course, in best competition fashion, he also recommends keeping the gun up here in front of your face. Now, the reason for you keeping the gun up in front of your face in the tactical sense is you want to maintain your view of what's going on downrange. In competition, I think it's a good idea to keep the gun up because when you shoot, this is where the gun is. You're not going to do any shooting down here. So I think getting the gun down way out of the shooting position isn't really a very good idea. So the classic IDPA reload, so keeping the gun up, keeping the both magazines in the weak hand so that your strong hand is only dealing with the gun, getting your reload done up here, stowing your mag, and then going to town. That's the classic kind of competition tactical reload. Now, after Duane's article appeared, Chuck Taylor himself writes a letter to the editor kind of saying, Mr. Thomas doesn't understand the tactical reload. That's not how you do it. That's not when you do it. And they went into an extensive description of his method, the original method of performing the tactical reload, and it's quite a bit different. And I think if you're doing it in an actual self-defense situation, it might make more sense the way it's described in the Chuck Taylor article, the way he describes it being done. The gun is not held high so that you can maintain a view of the gun and what's going on downrange. The gun is held low, more in a low ready position, so that it's not obscuring anything downrange. Now, of course, the tactical reload is done when there's nothing to shoot at, right? I think the IDPA rulebook always said a lull in the action. So you're not doing your reload while somebody's shooting at you. You're doing your reload when in your own mind you're pretty much convinced that you're not going to need to do any more shooting, but you just want to top the gun off because it's a good idea. You don't know when some more bad guys might show up like they always do at an IDPA match. So Chuck Taylor's reload keeps the gun down here, more in a low ready position. And the exchange is done not looking at the gun, but keeping your eye downrange. And I thought, okay, I guess that makes sense. You're maintaining a view of where your likely threats are going to come from, and you're going to essentially reload by touch. Now, here's where I think the biggest diversion is between the two techniques. In the Chuck Taylor reload, after you've taken the magazine out of the gun, he recommends putting it between the fingers of the gun hand. And then that leaves this hand free to manipulate the reload. Get that in the gun, then you get rid of your depleted mag and stow that. And the reason given was you don't want to drop the mag. You don't want to be messing with two mags at the same time and drop one of them. So you put the magazine between your little pinky and your other finger out of the way of the mag well so you still have access to it. Now I thought when I read that is, okay, so that you don't drop a magazine, you don't want to handle both of them with the same hand. But what am I doing now? I'm handling the magazine and my gun with the same hand. It seems to me that if you have two mags in one hand, the worst thing is going to happen is you're going to drop a magazine. If you're handling your gun and your magazine in the same hand, it seems to me you might drop the gun. I have big hands. I use double stack magazines for the demonstration specifically because they're bigger and a little bit harder to handle. I know I've read that some people with smaller hands have a hard time handling two high caps in one hand, but I'm thinking handling two mags in one hand is easier than handling a gun and a mag in one hand. I mean, that's just my take on it. And so not trying to kind of confuse the issue of which is the better one in terms of I'm out on the battlefield or I'm a police officer and this is the better way to do it because I'm less likely to drop one of the mags. I'm thinking more in terms of this is only going to take me 2 seconds. I think stowing the magazine here in your grip, then getting the gun loaded, then getting this magazine out of your gun hand again, you're essentially breaking your grip, to a certain extent, breaking your grip on the gun to grab the magazine, and then breaking your grip again to get the magazine out of your hand. That seems to me to even in some ways be less tactical than handling the two magazines together and keeping a firm grip on the gun. I'm going to leave it up to the viewer to decide what they want to do. But again, if I'm doing my reload and I'm getting the gun down here so I can maintain my view down range and doing the exchange at the gun, I mean, I'm holding the two mags already. It seems to me it's easier to just flip them rather than take the one that was in the gun, compromise my grip, get this one in the gun, and then holster the spent one. If you practice it extensively, I'm sure it works great. This is the one that I've practiced extensively, and I can do this one without looking at the gun, usually. But this idea of holding the gun and the mag at the same time strikes me as being less sure and less tactical than just handling 2 mags at the same time. Even if you drop both of them, you still have your gun. You've got a round in the chamber. I just think the idea that you're going to try to manipulate the mag and the gun at the same time, the same concern that Chuck has about dropping one of the mags, I have about dropping the gun. So you can do it either way. Keep it down so it's not blocking your view of what's going on downrange. Do the exchange down here, keeping an eye on what's going on down there. Again, it's an administrative task. You're not doing it under fire. There are no threats. That's why you're doing it this way, is because there's no visible threats. But I still think in the terms of getting it done as quickly as possible, as certainly as possible in IDPA, keeping the gun up here, doing the exchange at the gun, and putting the mag away, I think that's the best way to go.
Hey Power Factor fans, I'm Larry, and here this segment to give you a quick tip on shooting on a budget. And that's one thing that I've probably mentioned before. I am very budget conscious, and yet you can still participate in the sport, and you don't have to spend too terribly much money. So like I've got friends that shoot multiple divisions, like production and limited and open and revolver, and they've got a belt and they've got a holster and they've got mag pouches and they've got a shooting bag and they've got like one setup for every gun. Well, I don't get that much into it. I feel like I can get away with a lot less equipment and still save some money and still be competitive and have the equipment I need. So we've talked before about the CR speed belt that I use. I actually bought this in, I don't know, about 11 years ago. Let's just say that. So like 2004. And it's the same belt I've been using for 11 years. And I shoot production, I shoot limited 10. I have shot open, and I shoot mainly limited, primarily limited. So this is my limited setup. Just a quick, look here at the belt. We've got the holster for my Glock, and we've got the mag pouch. This is right front and center. And then my 3 mag pouches here. These are CR Speed Versa pouches. If you are like me and you want to shoot on a budget, you want to buy one piece of equipment that serves many roles, these CR Speed Versa pouches are just great. They've got little inserts. I don't know if I'm going to be able to show you that. I don't know if you can see there's a little wedge inside there that is a different thickness depending on what kind of gun you're shooting and what kind of magazines you've got. So if you're shooting an STI, the plate inside there is thinner because the mags are wider. And they also come with a Glock little, I don't know what you call that thing, little adapter. They come with the Glock adapter because the Glock mags are not quite as fat as the STI mag, so this little adapter is a little bit wider, and you can drop your Glock mags in the same pouch. And then it also comes with a Beretta CZ, what have you, probably Smith & Wesson metal magazines, XD magazines probably fit as well. And that little adapter is even wider because the mags are yet even narrower than the Glock. So, when I'm shopping for equipment, I look for stuff that I can use across multiple divisions and not have to, buy several $100s worth of equipment for each division that I shoot. I just buy it one time and I'm good to go. Now here's a quick tip for having said all that. Here's what I do to mark. I mark my equipment, and I don't know if you can see here. I take a paint pen, a paint marker, and I mark the location of each of these mag pouches. And you can see I've got each one marked a little bit differently. Like so. Let me see that one there. You see these paint marks on there. So I primarily shoot limited division. Every once in a while I feel like shooting production. So when I'm shooting production, I can't have the mag pouches up front, and I would use my typically use my CompTac belt feed mag pouch. So I take these mag pouches off, and I put the CompTac mag pouch here, but then I want more than 4 magazines, so I'll reuse one of these CR Speeds, which you can see, like I said, this is the limited setup, the mag right up front. where my first reload comes from here. Well, if I put my CompTac mag pouch on here, which is behind the hip, and everything has to be behind the hip, I want to keep using these CR speeds. So if I turn the belt around, and let's pretend now this is around my back, the mag is facing the wrong direction. So I need to take this apart and flip it over and rotate it so that mag is pointing, you know, this direction, something like that instead. So when I want to get everything put back to normal being my limited setup, that's why I've got these little that's why I've got these marks like so I can get these mag pouches in the right position, in the right angle, so I don't have to, you know, fiddle around with trying to reposition. Now on top of that, I've also got little marks on the underside of the belt. You should be able to see right here, there's a yellow mark on both sides of the mag pouches, and so I can see at what position on the belt they're supposed to be. So I've got, like I say, I've got the position marked on the belt, I've got the angle marked here. That way I can reuse this gear and not have to invest in separate equipment for each division. These are about $30 to $35 a piece. So, you know, 3 of these will set you back $100. You know, the holsters are anywhere from $50 to $75 to $100 depending on what you're buying. But, you know, this is good for, you know, again, I shoot the Glock in limited, I shoot the Glock in production sometimes, and this limited holster, even though it's very long, it's sized for a Glock 35, it's even open. I've opened it up at the bottom so I can use it for when I have the Glock 24, the Glock 35. If I was to have an open Glock, which I don't yet, the compensator would fit through there. And then even this compact Glock 23 that I like to shoot in production also fits the same holster. So there's a tip for you if you guys are interested in getting in the sport and you're concerned about how much money you're going to spend. There is a little bit of upfront cost, but you can use that gear across multiple divisions and not have to re-incur those costs again. So there's a quick tip for you this week, and enjoy. Thanks.
Hey Power Factor fans, I'm Rick. I'm back with another trivia question. And in keeping with our learning the new IDPA rules, we've got another new IDPA rulebook question. And the question is, in the new rulebook, the position in which you can wear your magazine pouch has changed. It's moved for many years since the sport was introduced. The magazine pouch has had to be located in a certain spot on your body, but that has changed since the introduction of the new October rulebook. So the question is, what is the body part, and we're talking like the anatomical, technical name for the body part behind which the magazine must be located? And if you come up with the common kind of, you know, everyday colloquial name for it, we're not going to accept that. You have to come up with the technical name for the body part that designates or identifies the part on the body where the magazine pouch must be located. So send your answers, right or wrong, to powerfactorshow@gmail.com, and we'll announce the winner on a future episode.
The Firearms Radio Network wants to take a moment to acknowledge Handgun Radio, hosted by Ryan Machad. Ryan has been hosting Handgun Radio since July of 2013 when he did his first show on bug guns. Check out the place to be for your news, discussion, and information in the handgunning world. handgunradio.com/iTunes. Subscribe now.